My name is Angela Chavez. I'm 34 years old. I have been holding this in my heart for so long, and I feel the time is right now to share with you. My sister did something really bad to me. I feel as to cry now. In my family, the secret wasn't just hidden beneath the surface. It was a ticking time bomb, a carefully concealed device, sitting in plain sight, waiting for the inevitable moment of detonation. The tension was palpable, a constant undercurrent in our daily lives. The silence in our house was suffocating, a thick, heavy blanket that stifled any attempt at genuine connection. It pressed down on you, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. It was a heavy presence you could feel the moment you walked in, a tangible weight that settled on your shoulders, a silent warning. My parents would abruptly stop talking when I entered a room, their voices fading into an uncomfortable hush, as if I'd stumbled upon something I wasn't meant to hear. They'd exchange quick, panicked glances, their eyes darting back and forth, a silent conversation passing between them, filled with unspoken anxieties. Any mention of my sister Sarah froze the air, turning the atmosphere icy and brittle. Her name became a forbidden word, a subject carefully avoided. "She's fine, just busy," my mother would say, her smile tight and forced, a brittle mask that barely concealed the worry in her eyes. It was a rehearsed line, delivered with practiced ease. Busy became their shield, their excuse for everything, a convenient explanation for her absence, her silence, her increasingly distant presence in our lives. I felt like an outsider in my own home, a stranger in a familiar land, disconnected from the people I was supposed to be closest to. Excluded from the real conversations, the important discussions, the shared moments of intimacy that define a family. I was always on the periphery, looking in. My gut told me something was terribly wrong, even as I desperately tried to ignore the nagging feeling, to convince myself that everything was normal. The happy family I thought we were had become a performance, a carefully constructed facade designed to hide the cracks and conceal the truth. And I was the only one without a script, the only one unaware of the carefully orchestrated charade, left to improvise my way through a reality I didn't understand. Looking back, the signs were everywhere, glaringly obvious in their subtle yet persistent presence. Sarah's sudden wealth, an inexplicable influx of money that seemed to appear out of nowhere, defying all logical explanation. The new house, a lavish, modern structure that replaced our modest family home, a symbol of a lifestyle we could never have afforded before. The luxury car, a sleek, high-performance vehicle that sat gleaming in the driveway, a testament to her newfound affluence. When I asked how she could afford it, she'd just wink and say, "Good investments," her voice laced with a hint of secrecy, a playful evasion that only deepened my suspicions. My parents would nod along, faces strained with pride, their expressions a mixture of awkwardness and forced enthusiasm, as if they were trying to convince themselves as much as me. They were all in on it, protecting her, shielding her from scrutiny, complicit in the deception that was slowly unraveling our family. Building a wall around me, brick by brick, isolating me from the truth, keeping me at arm's length from the reality they were so desperately trying to conceal. I was left in the dark, stumbling blindly through a maze of lies and half-truths, desperately searching for a light switch that never seemed to appear. Vulnerable to a truth I never saw coming, a devastating revelation that would shatter my perception of everything I thought I knew about my family. The silence wasn't just about keeping secrets, it was about keeping me out, about protecting me from something they believed I couldn't handle. I didn't know it yet, but that silence was about to shatter, the fragile facade of normalcy about to crumble into a million pieces. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same, the foundations of my life irrevocably shaken, the landscape of my family forever altered. The truth was coming for me, whether I was ready or not. A storm gathering on the horizon, promising to unleash its fury and expose the secrets that had been buried for so long. The truth, as it often does, arrived on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. It was a day like any other, filled with the mundane routines of daily life. Little did I know the course of my life was about to be irrevocably altered. It came disguised as a letter, an unassuming piece of mail that held the weight of a devastating revelation. Sorting through my mail, a task I usually performed without a second thought, I found an official-looking envelope. It was from a mortgage company, one I'd never heard of before, which immediately raised a red flag. My name, printed clearly on the front, my address, all seemed normal, yet a sense of unease began to wash over me. And then I saw it, a bright red past due stamp, glaring back at me like a warning sign. I opened it, my hands shaking slightly, a knot forming in my stomach with each passing second. The letter began, "Notice of default." My eyes darted to the loan amount, $700,000. The number seemed to jump off the page, mocking me. I scanned further, my heart pounding in my chest. Property address. And then it hit me. Sarah's new house. My brain simply refused to process it. It felt like the world was spinning, the words blurring before my eyes. $700,000. The sheer magnitude of the sum was incomprehensible. In my name. How could this be? It had to be a mistake, a clerical error, some kind of cruel joke. There was no other explanation. My first instinct was to call the mortgage company, to get to the bottom of this immediately. I imagined clearing it up with a simple phone call, a brief explanation, and everything would be back to normal. But a cold dread crept in, a chilling premonition as I thought about Sarah's house, the circumstances surrounding it. My parents' evasive answers to my questions about the house purchase started replaying in my mind, their carefully chosen words now sounding hollow and suspicious. The subtle tension at family gatherings, the unspoken anxieties that hung in the air, all began to make a horrifying kind of sense. The puzzle pieces, scattered and confusing for so long, were finally falling into place, clicking together with a sickening finality. They were forming a picture, a complete and devastating picture that I desperately didn't want to see, didn't want to believe. I sat frozen at my kitchen table, the worn wood suddenly feeling cold beneath my fingertips. I found myself staring blankly at the letter for hours, rereading the same sentences over and over, hoping to find some hidden meaning, some escape from the reality it presented. The world outside kept moving, oblivious to the turmoil raging within me, the cars rushing by, the people going about their lives completely unaware of the earthquake that had just struck mine. The silence in my apartment was now as heavy and suffocating as the strained silence that had become the norm in my parents' house. This wasn't just a bill, a simple financial obligation. It was a declaration of war, a betrayal of the deepest kind, launched by someone I had trusted implicitly, someone I had believed would always have my back. The enemy, I realized with a sickening jolt, was not some faceless corporation or anonymous stranger, but my own sister, the person I had shared a lifetime of memories with. The denial, the desperate clinging to the hope that this was all a mistake, was finally over. The truth, stark and undeniable, was staring me right in the face, impossible to ignore any longer. My life had just changed forever, shattered into a million pieces by a single devastating letter. I was no longer safe, no longer secure in the bonds of my own family, the very foundation of my world crumbling beneath my feet. The secret, carefully guarded and hidden for so long, was finally out in the open, exposed for all its ugliness. And I was the one left holding the wreckage, the one tasked with picking up the pieces and trying to make sense of the devastation. The shock was paralyzing, a slow, cold realization that seeped into my bones. $700,000. My name, my sister's house. This was the kind of nightmare that happened to other people, not to me. I tried to convince myself it was identity theft by a stranger, something I could fight. But the address on the notice kept pulling me back to Sarah. I had celebrated my own financial ruin at her housewarming party. The disbelief was physical, a wall I slammed into again and again. My trust in my family was crumbling. How could Sarah do this? How could she look me in the eye? The betrayal wasn't just about money, it was about losing the sister I thought I had. She hadn't just stolen my credit. She'd stolen my past, my present, and my future. The person I thought I knew was gone, and I was left alone with the truth. The confrontation was inevitable. I drove to Sarah's house, the default notice in hand. She greeted me with a smile, until she saw the letter. Panic flickered in her eyes, then vanished behind a cold mask. She didn't deny it. She explained, not with apology, but with excuses. She and her husband wanted the house, but their credit was ruined. She used my information, memorized from years ago, to get the loan. She forged my signature, redirected mail, and made payments, until they couldn't. She insisted she meant to pay it back, as if that made it okay. "It's not like you were using your credit for anything big," she said. The arrogance, the entitlement, the utter disregard for my life, it was breathtaking. She wasn't sorry for what she did, only that she got caught. My identity was just a tool for her. The betrayal was complete. She saw herself as the victim of circumstance. I saw her for what she was, the architect of my ruin. There was no going back. The truth was out, and it was uglier than I ever imagined. I went to my parents, desperate for support, clinging to the hope that they would understand the gravity of the situation. I needed them, perhaps more than ever before. With trembling hands, I laid the letter on the table, the evidence of Sarah's deceit stark against the polished wood. It felt like placing my heart on that table, vulnerable and exposed. I took a deep breath and told them everything, laying bare the details of Sarah's actions, the extent of the financial damage, and the emotional toll it had taken on me. I recounted every detail, hoping they would grasp the magnitude of what had transpired. But they already knew. The air in the room thickened with unspoken truths and a heavy sense of dread. My mother's voice trembled as she spoke, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. She clasped her hands together and begged me, pleaded with me not to go to the police. Think of what it would do to her. She has children, she implored, her voice cracking with emotion. Consider the impact on the grandchildren. My father was stern, his face a mask of disapproval and disappointment. You can't destroy your own family over some money, he declared, his voice firm and unwavering. We'll handle it. We'll take care of everything. It became painfully clear that they were more concerned with protecting Sarah, their other daughter, and the family's reputation, the carefully constructed image they had cultivated for so long. It seemed they cared more about avoiding scandal than with what had been done to me, the injustice I had suffered. Their words were a deeper betrayal than the fraud itself, a wound inflicted by the very people who were supposed to love and protect me unconditionally. They asked me to be silent, to bury the truth for the sake of family harmony. They wanted me to carry the burden, to shoulder the weight of their secret, all for the sake of appearances. In that moment, I realized I was no longer their daughter, not in the way I had always believed. I was a problem to be managed, an inconvenience to be swept under the rug. They chose Sarah, the perpetrator of the crime, over me, the victim who had come to them seeking justice and support. They thought they were protecting the family, preserving its image, but in reality they were enabling her, allowing her behavior to continue unchecked, perpetuating a cycle of deceit. My pain, my suffering, was deemed expendable, a necessary sacrifice for the sake of maintaining the family facade. I stood in their kitchen, the familiar surroundings now feeling alien and cold, realizing with devastating clarity that I was utterly alone, abandoned by the very people I had always counted on. The family I thought I had, the unbreakable bond I had always cherished, was gone, shattered into a million pieces. Their loyalty was not to me, not to the truth, but to the secret, to the carefully constructed lie they had built their lives upon. I was on my own, adrift in a sea of betrayal and disappointment, and the weight of their betrayal, the crushing realization of their abandonment, was almost too much to bear. The days that followed were a blur of tense calls and whispered arguments. My parents and Sarah closed ranks, treating me like a threat, not a victim. Every conversation was guilt and manipulation, never justice. I pulled my credit report. It was worse than I thought. 2 maxed-out credit cards over $30,000, all in my name. Sarah used them for furniture, vacations, a life I never lived. When I confronted them, the excuses grew desperate. Sarah claimed the cards were to keep up appearances. My mother called them short-term solutions. They painted Sarah as a victim, rewriting history to suit their narrative. The pressure was relentless. Calls, texts, accusations. They wanted me to absorb the debt, the stress, the consequences. The secret wasn't just the loan. It was the rotten core of our family now exposed. I was being isolated, blamed for not being more understanding. The truth was out, and it was tearing us apart. I stood at a crossroads. Silence or justice. Silence meant protecting Sarah, absorbing the debt, and living with resentment. Justice meant going to the police, clearing my name, and breaking the family forever. My heart ached for the family I used to have. I pictured Sarah's children, my parents' heartbreak. Was my freedom worth their pain? But my head reminded me I was the victim. Forgiveness without accountability is enabling. If I stayed silent, Sarah would learn nothing. My parents' manipulation would win. My well-being would always come last. Justice wasn't revenge, it was self-preservation. I had to draw a line. You do not get to destroy me. The choice was agonizing. But I knew what I had to do. I had to save myself, even if it meant losing everything else. The time for silence was over. I chose justice. I chose myself. I gathered the evidence and filed a police report. The fallout was immediate. My father disowned me. My mother called me heartless. They cut me off completely. Sarah was arrested, her house foreclosed, her family upended. I had to testify in court detailing my sister's betrayal. My parents sat in the gallery supporting her. I was utterly alone. Clearing my name was a bureaucratic nightmare, but the financial burden slowly lifted. The emotional burden, though, was heavier than ever. I won my freedom but lost my family. They saw me as the villain, the one who broke the code of silence. But they broke it first. The choice didn't fix my life. It just gave me a chance to rebuild. I stood on my own for the first time. The cost was everything I'd ever known. But I survived. 2 years have passed. My parents and sister are gone from my life. The holidays are quiet. My phone doesn't ring. Sometimes the loneliness is crushing. I wonder if the price was too high. But then I remember the suffocating secrets, the feeling of being sacrificed. I know I made the only choice I could. Pressing charges wasn't revenge, it was self-respect. I matter. My future matters. I couldn't heal in the environment that broke me. The family I lost was already an illusion. Sometimes true strength is letting go. You can't fix people who don't want to be fixed. My life is smaller, but more honest. I'm rebuilding, surrounded by people who value truth. The scars remain, but so does my resilience. For the first time, I'm standing on my own 2 feet in a life that's truly mine.